I'm Michael Fox, and this is the Prospector Podcast, and we are on location at the 50th anniversary of the New Orleans Investment Conference. It is the oldest gold and precious metals conference in the world, and it's quite apropos. It's the golden anniversary at this particular conference, and wandering around, I've run into a lot of old friends I hadn't seen for an awful long time, and some old friends that I see on a more regular basis, but I managed to run into Scott Melbye, the president of the Uranium Producers Association of America, and I got him to join me today. We're going to talk about the uranium market and everything that's changed since then. So welcome aboard, Scott.
Michael, it's great to be with you as always.
Yes, always good to see you in person. Our paths cross a few times a year, but not as often as I'd like them to, but that's the nature of yours and my business. It doesn't necessarily cross as often as we would like it to, but it is what it is. But just like the uranium market is what it is. When we last spoke, the United States had just passed a bipartisan bill to limit Russian uranium from entering the country. That was way back in May, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. Now, since that time, and very recently, as in within the last couple of weeks, Russia's decided tit for tat, and they've decided they're just simply not going to send us their uranium. And, why wait for the ban? Let's start now. How is that going to affect the uranium market in the short term?
Yeah, listen, we were thrilled with that legislative victory earlier in the year to get the Russian uranium ban passed. It was 2.5 years after the invasion of Ukraine, so it took a while. And the reason being is the U.S. had grown very reliant on Russian uranium. About 25% of our enrichment services have been coming from Russia, but a full 50% of our uranium conversion and enrichment needs are being covered by Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Russia. So it's not surprising that the ban took a while to pass and did include some waiver provisions that if a utility could demonstrate that they're having difficulty sourcing uranium without the supply of Russian uranium, they would get a waiver granted up at an ultimate deadline by the end of 2027. We agreed to this provision. We don't want to see plants impacted negatively in the United States, but we did caution that there was always the risk that Putin could embargo us the other way, and he did last week. And listen, this is the reason why we need a more viable, robust domestic fuel cycle. Again, that uranium conversion and enrichment industries. We were independent of Russian supplies before. We will again, but now we need to really accelerate things and get our domestic activities back up. Congress recognized that the other part of this ban was revitalization funding for the industry, and so over $3.4 billion had been directed through the Nuclear Fuel Security Act and similar legislation to expand the strategic uranium reserve to include enriched uranium and high-assay low-enriched uranium. So I'm confident we'll get there, but are we going to have a supply squeeze even tighter in the near term? Absolutely. And I think in the new year, we should see prices really responding to that because there is a lot of utility unfilled demand that will be made even more acute with this move by Putin.
Yeah, you mentioned the processing. It was at one point, America wasn't processing any uranium at all. It was all being done predominantly by Russia.
Completely true. We do have enrichment capacity in New Mexico, and we have a couple of new entrants trying to start up enrichment. But we were getting a lot from Russia, and we do get imports of enriched uranium from European suppliers as well.
Yeah. Now, how's that if Putin's going to cut off the supply? How far along have we gotten since May and restarting some of those enrichment plants?
Yeah, so there have been announcements by Urenco in New Mexico to increase their capacity there. So they're ramping up to provide more supply. Orano in France has indicated they're going to increase production and look at possibly launching a new enrichment facility in the state of Tennessee. That's going to be a little while down the road. So again, I think we're going to see tightness in the market for utilities that were strategic and didn't rely heavily on Russia or didn't cover their potential risk from Russia. it may be a period where they're going to have to pay up for uranium fuel over this period. But on the uranium side, we're really encouraged. Our company, Uranium Energy Corp, has restarted our mine in Wyoming. We're doing the same down in Texas and looking to ramp up to 5 to 6 million pounds a year in the U.S. by 2030. And there are other U.S. producers that have also gone back into production and are looking to help close that gap with domestic uranium. So we're quite encouraged by the trend right now.
Now, Kazakhstan is kind of like an in-between. They side a little bit with the West at times, they side a little bit with the Russians at times. They're kind of caught in the middle of this little spat.
Yep.
Are they going to remain neutral, or are they going to fall one side or the other?
Well, they've been very clever at playing the West and the East. Given their proximity to China and Russia, they have to be very diplomatic. But I think, the reality is Russia now controls more than half of their uranium production. That's more important to the Kremlin now than ever, now that they're in the penalty box on sanctions. They need that oil, gas, and uranium more than ever. China, is the fastest growing nuclear program in the world. It'll surpass the U.S. by the end of the decade. They have huge uranium needs, and they want uranium that's not encumbered by controls by the EU, the UK, or the US. So we're really seeing, Kazakhstan, yes, constrained in exporting. They're kind of getting caught up in Russia's sanctions mess in terms of transportation, but they do have an easy button, and that's just to sell more to Russia and more to China. And this was clearly in Russia's interest to make those transportation options difficult through, say, the Central Asian route through the Black Sea. Was really frustrated at every step of the way. And I have a feeling that was in Russia's interest to have that happen. So Kazakhstan, the largest producer in the world, 40% of world production. But I don't think we're going to see much of those supplies make it to the West really within the next 3 to 4 years. All that's going to Russia and China. So more important, the need for Canadian and American uranium production.
How much of the usage in the West came from Kazakhstan prior to the sanctions?
Well, I mean, the U.S. figure, we were getting 50% of our uranium from Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Russia. So that was a really heavy reliance. And that's going to just completely flip to zero here in the coming years. So good news is we're not without options. I think Canada, particularly the Athabasca Basin of Saskatchewan, will be a real focal point of growth and new mines in the coming years. And the United States has the ability to contribute probably 25 million pounds a year under these kind of conditions. It's not going to happen overnight. Mines are, really just in the ramp up stage now. But I think the West is going to be fine, but we do need to focus on getting our capabilities back up to where they've been in the past.
And the last question about Kazakhstan before we move on to the next topic, but there was talk that they were going to rev up their production. And then they hit a wall with a chemical that they needed to process the yellow cake on site. Has that been resolved? And is it, given the sanctions and that going on, is it even relevant, or is it just moot now?
Well, no, I think, we are interested in seeing how much Kazakhstan can produce, whether it's 55, 65, or 75 million. That has an impact on the global balance. But you're absolutely right. They've been very challenged in getting up even to their nominal capacity because of the sulfuric acid shortages, and also some labor and some supply chain. I think there's systematic challenges in Kazakhstan to get back up to levels where, they've stated they want to be. So not only are we seeing that being taken off the table and sold into Russia and China, but their overall numbers are lower than expected, which then causes demand draw from other mines. The Chinese, very active in Africa, in Namibia. Niger is a kind of an open question right now with the coup and kicking out Western suppliers like France and the United States out of the country. Will China or Russia emerge there? Possibly. So again, we're in a global resource war, and it's coming at a time where nuclear power is doubling in generation capacity in the next 15 years. So we really need to, be mindful of where we're getting our uranium supplies.
The sulfuric acid issue, is it a Kazakhstan issue or is it a global issue?
I think it's certainly a Kazakh issue because of competing industries there. Our industry in the United States largely uses sodium bicarbonate as our leaching solution, which is basically carbonated, oxygenated water. And so we don't have the same sulfuric acid challenge.
So it's a Kazakh issue,
Yeah.
not necessarily a world issue. So let's go back domestically. There's been a change in government as of technically there's a government in waiting as of November the 5th. The change of government's January the 20th, but there's a new administration coming. The former administration kind of got onto the uranium bandwagon about halfway through their term. Trump has always been like drill, baby, drill. And you're never really sure where he sits on all the other stuff. But let's get past all the campaign rhetorics and such. What can we expect as far as the energy industry and this new administration?
Yeah, no, we're very excited about Trump's election and where nuclear fits in what he terms as American energy dominance. And what that means is we're producing enough energy domestically to be self-reliant on our energy needs, but also have the ability to export energy, like mostly in the form of LNG, to friendly allies in Europe and Asia. You're right that the Biden administration did come around to nuclear power, realizing it was part of that carbon reduction goal that is so important to the political left. And so we continue to enjoy really strong bipartisan support in Congress. So we're one of the few issues where we're not polarized on the issue. Both Republicans and Democrats value nuclear power. So if you're wondering how Trump, will deal with nuclear going forward, we need to just look at his last administration where he funded the Advanced Reactor Development Program at DOE, which was really the kickstart for projects like TerraPower, NuScale, X-Energy to move forward. In addition to other projects being supported by that, he was also behind the nuclear fuel working group that concluded that a strong, viable American nuclear fuel cycle is in our energy interests and in our national security interests. So we think energy dominance going forward really means nuclear power and natural gas will be the heavy lift in the energy electricity sector. And it couldn't be coming at a more important time with the demand from AI and data centers and the need to build more generating capacity in the United States.
Yeah, when we last talked, let's go down that AI rabbit hole. When we last talked, that was back in May. So we're talking 6 months ago. AI was a train sitting at the station just waiting to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought, okay, it's going to be like a steam engine and it's going to go chugging along and we're going to have to adapt, but we've got a runway to do so. Damn, it's a bullet train.
Yeah, it's huge. Listen, the only thing standing between these big hyperscalers and tech companies in the AI space, only thing between them and multi-trillion-dollar market caps is energy. And they are not going to let the AI dream die on lack of energy. So you see the initiatives that they've made to reach out to existing nuclear power plants, try to buy the output of those reactors, even behind the meter, and co-locate next to the power plant and take that energy directly. You're seeing Microsoft funding the restart of 3 Mile Island. And you're seeing lots of interest in the small modular advanced reactors like Oklo and Oracle pursuing as much as 5 gigawatt data centers powered by nuclear power plants. So, I think it's the best thing that's happened to the nuclear industry in my 41 years that if you think about innovation and our industry has been kind of characterized by either state-owned electric utility companies or investor-owned utility companies that were regulated, and they were guaranteed a regulated rate of return if they built power plants and delivered electricity. That's not exactly the most cutting-edge, innovative industry. So when you have these tech companies partnering with the utilities who are very good at reactor operations, very good at safety culture around operations, we now have the right recipe to really see nuclear power grow faster than we've seen in the past. And if you have a receptive Trump administration that is looking to streamline regulation, permitting, and licensing, we have the recipe to build more reactors more quickly.
Yes, we do. Do we have any idea how big of an expansion we're going to have to look at for our energy markets to fill this growth in AI that seems to be coming at us at a very rapid pace?
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at a small example of that, is the Commonwealth of Virginia is already seeing 20% of their electricity generated in the state from data centers, being consumed by data centers. That's expected to double to 40% and very quickly. And so the utilities are going to need to build the power plants, or these tech companies are going to have to fund the construction of those plants. But we've seen some estimates even before the AI boom, that perhaps as much as 300 gigawatts of nuclear could be built in the United States, beyond 2030. So we're seeing the first of a kind SMRs being built and demonstrated between now and 2030. I see the big wave of construction coming in 2030 on, both here and abroad.
Does AI speed that up?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it really does. And, they have the presidents here, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, they've expressed to President Trump how important American leadership in AI is. And, they're going to need the energy for that. Is that also going to be a boost for natural gas? Absolutely. Because I think, the immediate needs, we're not going to be able to build SMRs, that quickly. And some of the initial demand, I think, is going to be filled by natural gas. But that puts, more stress on the grid and the availability of electricity as a whole. So we're in a real hyper growth mode. And it's a good thing we have a president in the White House now that really is all about energy, because we're going to need it more than ever.
Yeah, and as this industry is very circular, that takes us back to that first discussion about the processing of the uranium. One of the drawbacks that was holding back the SMRs was it needs a more pure enrichment of uranium. Have steps been taken so that they're going to have the fuel to fuel these reactors when they come online?
Yeah, no, it's important. The high assay low enriched uranium, that's uranium enriched to 19%. Think of it as high octane fuel for these new designs. The U.S. Congress and DOE have been really prioritizing that, and we've seen the Department of Energy issue an RFQ to supply HALEU as a stimulus to the government, buying that to get these initiatives off the ground. DOE is awarded to 4 different suppliers, so we're seeing the right things happening there. But I think if you're a reactor constructor in the SMR advanced world that needs HALEU fuel, it can't come soon enough. But again, there's a market imperative for it, and there's policy support. So we're hopeful that doesn't become an Achilles heel in the construction and startup of some of these reactors.
Now, we talk about a lot of things in relation to geopolitics, like critical metals are critical because China processes them and we don't. Uranium is critical because similar reasons. Is AI going to become a strategically critical industry to the point where it's going to kickstart and push things downstream to the uranium industry, to the reactor industry, and put more government support behind it in order to not fall behind our adversaries?
Yeah, I hope so. You'll recall that uranium was put on the critical minerals list in the Trump administration. It was taken off by the Biden administration, and now there is a strong movement on Capitol Hill to get that back on. And what's important with critical mineral designation is it speeds up and streamlines the permitting and licensing of new mines. So we know how big an impact that can have on our ability to be more self-sufficient in these critical and energy minerals. So I think the AI boom just increases the urgency to get uranium on the critical minerals list.
Okay. But will that also make the reactor industry a critical industry for, the Department of Energy and Department of Defense going forward?
Yeah, I think President Trump has mentioned it in recent speeches where, he sees America's need to be at the cutting edge of the AI revolution and not be lagging China, for example. And so I think you're going to see a very big strategic. I mean, listen, Trump's going to do two things on day one. One is close the border and address illegal immigration, and two, increase our energy dominance in the United States. So I think you'll see a lot of focus on these new reactors in the coming years.
Okay. As we mentioned, this is all that's happened since May.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how fast things had started to happen in our previous talks to that. So let's look into the crystal ball for the next year, if that's even possible, given what's happened in the last 6 months. Where do you see things shaking out? Do you see more mines coming online? Do you see more processing coming online? What kind of effect is that going to have on the uranium? Well, on the uranium price, but that's an odd question to ask, because the spot price is almost at times irrelevant because everyone buys under contract.
Yeah, I would disagree with that. I mean, the spot market trades 50 to 100 million pounds a year. It's just utilities buy maybe 25% of their needs there, but it is critically important. There are two prices: the long-term price and the spot price. Both feed off of each other. Right now, the long-term price is approaching 85 and has steadily increased. So that's probably a great barometer of the longer term fundamentals. Uranium spot price can fluctuate due to near term, materials materializing onto the market or being pulled off the market. So right now we're trading at around $77 a pound in the spot market. But listen, we have a structural deficit. It's 55 million pounds through 2025. That's 55 million pounds less than what the world consumes versus what we produce. That's going to put stress on spot supplies, which then also raises long-term prices. So I think in the new year, if we're not seeing prices, above $100 a pound, I'll be shocked, because we just aren't like an efficient commodity like copper, silver, zinc, where there's mines that would come on to respond to this kind of price signal much more quickly than uranium. It'll happen, but it'll happen over several years, because we missed an entire development and exploration cycle with the low price, the long prolonged bear market. So this is the hangover from that. Things will correct, but I think it will take several years, because now demand's increasing actually faster than we're bringing on new mines.
So the exponential effect of both of those is going to put a lot of pressure on price and an upward trajectory.
I think so, and not just kind of a flash and crash like we saw in 2007. I think you see a period of sustained prices, and we need that. That's a good thing, because that is going to incentivize big mines in Saskatchewan and elsewhere to make the big capital investments to move forward, which will make the market more stable, in the coming years. But we've always, the sort of equilibrium market clearing price for uranium is kind of a theoretical economic place where supply and demand perfectly meets. We've never been at that point. We're either far below where that is in terms of price, or we're way above, and that speaks to the inefficiency of the uranium market, which is horrible when the uranium market's oversupplied and really contributes to longer depressed price cycles. But when it's undersupplied, it's the investor's best friend, and that this won't be resolved quickly. And we should see a very sustained, robust uranium market for many years.
And the last question, you talk about Trump's view of American energy dominance. Does that include Canada?
I think there is a real desire for Western countries. There's an initiative that's come out of the G7 meetings. It's called the Sapporo 5, where countries like Canada, the United States, the European Union, UK, really realize that if we're moving away from Russian and Chinese supplies, that we need to trade as a bloc and support each other's uranium requirements. So I think it's a good thing that the United States continue to get significant supplies from Canada. It's just, I don't think supplies from Russia and China are in our best interest, but we're fortunate to be next door to Canada. And I think that will not be impacted in the Trump administration. But we do need to have more domestic. We can't be the world's largest nuclear power program and not have a meaningful amount of domestic uranium production. That seems to be being corrected with the market conditions and positive policy.
Yeah, well, this has been fun. We went around the block a lot, and a lot has happened since we last talked in the last 6 months. And I'm sure by the next time we talk, so if it's 3 months, we might have the same amount of things to talk about if it's moving that fast. So if people want to learn more about the American Uranium Producers Association, how would they do so, or how would they follow, information and stuff that you're providing?
Yeah, so I mean, my two companies, Uranium Energy Corp, uraniumenergy.com or uraniumroyalty.com are great sources of information. In terms of broader global market information, the World Nuclear Association has an excellent website and database of reactors, reactor growth, uranium requirements, and also the Nuclear Energy Institute in Washington, D.C. is a great source of information on where the U.S. nuclear industry is today and where it's headed. So it's a great time to be a uranium investor. The fundamentals have never looked better. And so we're very pleased that we have a lot of happy investors here in New Orleans.
Wonderful. It's a pleasure chatting with you, and I look forward to our paths crossing in the new year again. Thanks very much for your time, Scott.
Thanks, Mike.
The Prospector News Podcast is for educational purposes only. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and are not to be taken as investment advice. Listeners need to do their own due diligence and seek advice of a licensed investment advisor.